In speaking with Chair Robinson, you'll recall that the Committee of the Whole is what the COTW denotation referred to in last year's plan was in April with a pretty substantial presentation to the board. We do have that recorded, and we did circulate that to all board members, including new board members, at your organizational meetings or prior to your organizational meetings. There is an intent to have a much shorter, more abbreviated update as part of your June meeting, which would be led by this committee chair, Chair Robinson. Moving forward then with the plan, standing committees starting to provide recommendations relative to program modifications. That again refers to the process we use with the mandatory versus discretionary program document. We would start that as part of our June discussion with the committees. HR Finance then would recommend budget priorities. Again, you had a resolution, a template resolution you used. That would also take place in June. So at your next committee meeting, you'd start that. The county board would then adopt those budget priorities again in June. Administration would work to disseminate that information to department heads in July. In terms of operative dates for new position requests, just for your information, that again is remaining the same with June 1st. Moving from budget priorities to budget assumptions, we've already had a couple of conversations about those here at this committee, but the timeline for budget assumptions, that would start with this committee in July. County board meeting in July is July 23rd, so just again a slight change for county board adoption. The assumptions would then be built into, we'd work to build those into our draft initial budget, operating budget for each of our departments in August. The budget development process is all of August and September. Moving into the presentation, the ultimate presentation of the budget, I know Chair Robinson and this committee really does appreciate is having that as soon as possible. And speaking with Christy, we really think that the October 9th HR Finance and Property Committee meeting from an operational standpoint is the soonest time we would be able to have a fully balanced budget in terms of all the new inputs that would be coming in with updated information. However, in speaking with Chair Robinson, the idea of presenting to all of the standing committees about any significant changes in the 2025 proposed budget from the 2024 adopted budget for the departments that report to those committees. I'm confident that I can provide that overview of what those changes might be at your October meeting. So the week before that it would be presented to and delivered to this committee, I don't have significant concerns giving the update on, for example, if there's a new position request or a new program or a substantial program change as part of the budget process, I can get that information to those standing committees the first week of October. It just is the final balancing of that overall budget that, at least from a staff perspective, we'd greatly appreciate having that time through October 9th. Then we would need to fine-tune the dates moving forward, but amendments to the individual committee and ultimately reviewing those. We still have to work through what those dates are going to look like. But ultimately, your county board meeting dates, and please, Kim, correct me if I'm wrong on these dates from looking on the calendar, but it looks like the public hearing for the budget is envisioned to be held on November 7th, and then the final adoption of the budget would be November 12th based on how your calendar is currently set up. So we would fit those other dates in there, but those dates are correct? Okay, perfect. But just talking through a couple of the date modifications, those were, from the staff perspective, some initial thoughts. So not, again, a fundamental change, just a couple of slight modifications based on the new term in light of elections and some operational timelines. Your September board meeting is a little bit earlier than the 26th this year. So having till the 9th with the HR Finance and Property Committee meeting from an operational perspective works better. But I don't envision that to be substantial because I can still give those updates to all those standing committees on more significant aspects of the budget for their particular purposes in early October.
So what is the deadline for us to authorize for publication? Do we know what that date is?
He asked me that this morning, and we would work our 15 days back from the public hearing, right, Christy? The date of the 7th?
At least 3 days for
Yeah.
publication.
So 18 days back from November 7th?
Twenty-second? 21st, 22nd?
Yeah. So if we had you do have a meeting scheduled, an HR finance meeting scheduled for the 22nd, but if we had that meeting on the 21st, that would be better, given all things local media and just the need to make sure we proofread that publication.
So then we also have tended to have a meeting of the Finance Committee to look at any amendments on the 11th, typically that Monday before the county board meeting. I think last year we met at 8 o'clock in the morning. So it would be nice if we could get those in there from a schedule. But we can rough this out. Does that make sense? So the county board's involvement, the standing committees will be to, obviously they're involved in the capital projects and they should be involved in the position requests and other things on an ongoing basis. But then they would be involved in the budget priorities and assumptions in June and July. And then we encourage them to look at the fees and priorities within the programs. And then once the budget is presented to the county board, take a look at that. And then if they've got recommendations coming out of that they would provide those to us before, the week before the 21st meeting, to give us a chance to look at those. And then again, there would be a second opportunity after the public hearing. So we're looking for trying to give as many opportunities for input as possible. Ultimately, the county board is the arbitrator. It's the county board's budget. We would make recommendations, but ultimately the county board will make the decision. So does this make sense? We can try to memorialize this and then get it on calendars. I'm seeing thumbs up.
I just saw one day is resolution.
If you could grab the microphone.
The resolution approving the 2024 CIP, it says presentation to board on August 17th. I assume that date would be adjusted after the 22nd, and I think the 17th is
It's-
Saturday.
18th and,
Yeah, the calendar that was in there, I apologize if I didn't say it. That's the 24, so I'm working off of, we do have to make some changes on the
Okay.
dates. But
Thank you.
I believe we have the resolution for CIP that you're referencing. The board has, your two meetings in August are on the 15th and the 20th. I would envision the presentation, just to make sure we have, it's a tight timeline, but if we can have the 20th to actually make the presentation on the CIP, we'll certainly make sure it's not on a Saturday. Good catch.
and again, that's a preliminary approval, sort of to give, the purpose of bringing the capital improvement plan in at that time is to build it into the process so that we can look at where we are with fund balance and what the levy impact might be and what the funding sources might be that we would apply to it. It's the ultimate KIP approval as part of the budget document itself. So this is sort of a preliminary planning process that gives administration a little bit more direction on moving forward. So it's a precursor to final approval. So I would ask, I'm going to, Supervisor Reynolds or Poole, do you have any questions relative to the process?
Not at this point, it still looks.
Or other members, any questions? I think the others have been through the process. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I don't have any
Just-
questions at this time.
Supervisor, I believe that was Supervisor Poole or Supervisor Reynolds. You can go.
Reynolds.
Supervisor Reynolds, go ahead. I just have one thing to add after that.
Go ahead.
To Supervisor Reynolds, I don't have any questions at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just an ask, in light of the fact that we do have that budget summit, that abbreviated budget summit, if I know many of the members that are returning, you had the pleasure of sitting through that in person last term. If there are members that do watch the recordings that were circulated previously, if there's something that perhaps we didn't cover sufficiently last term, just reach out to Chair Robinson and or myself to let us know that, so we can at least provide some additional information or touch on that in that abbreviated version. But otherwise, my recollection of it was that it was rather long and exhaustive. So I don't know if there's something that we didn't cover sufficiently. Just a highlight of what that would be is helpful. Thanks.
I think the intent is to get at a very high level, but I think given the fact that we've had the significant change in shared revenue, in the sharing of the 1 cent of the sales tax, I think that bears some focus and that creates opportunities going forward. So we'll spend some time on looking at revenue streams and where we are relative to state aid and other factors. So all right, we will finalize this and use it to drive the discussion. I think we can do that through consensus. And we'll bring it back in to formalize it going forward. All right. That takes us to potential transfer of surplus properties, 2111 Northwestern Avenue and 4412 Statine Drive in Wausau. Those properties were for sale in the surplus property, and we received communication from the city of Wausau that both of those parcels were used as drainage areas. And I'll turn it over to Kim Trueblood, to the clerk.
Okay, so I had gotten an email from City of Wausau Bill Hebert back in April, and he asked about these two properties that we had listed on Wisconsin Surplus. And he said the two properties are drainage ways that should probably be given to the city for maintenance purposes. The property on Northwestern should have been deeded over to the city by the developer, and I'm not sure why that didn't happen. Statine Drive has a culvert draining into it and would never be developable. And he said the city would never issue a building permit for either parcel. So we pulled both of the parcels from Wisconsin Surplus, and then he followed up with an email last Friday asking what the status of these parcels were. So they are up for discussion today.
So again, the process by which properties become tax delinquent and we take the tax deed is that there is a failure on the part of the owner to pay the property taxes, which we reconcile on an annual basis, and the county pays the other governmental units their proportionate share of the taxes, and we become, in essence, the bank. And after a period of time, once those meet the statutory requirements, we can take that through tax foreclosure, which we've done in both cases. But then we have, in terms, reimbursed those or given to those communities their taxes and special assessments associated with that property. The normal process, there's a process under Chapter 75 of the statutes that allows local governments to be involved in that tax deed process. And it can be a negotiated process or others, but I don't think we've in the past given property away. We have sought to try to recover our expenses associated with those. The question is, what would we do in this situation? We have an email. We don't have a formal request under Chapter 75 for transfer, but we've had the issue raised, and right now we are placing these property in the surplus property program, but I think given the limitations, it makes sense for us to engage the city in discussions as to how we would effectuate a transfer of property under what terms and conditions. So, Mike, is there anything from a legal perspective that you'd like to add?
I'll just note that our ordinances talk about the requirements for selling tax delinquent property to municipalities, and really the requirement in our ordinance relates to recouping the unpaid taxes that were referred to by the chair. So that's in our ordinance, which doesn't give us a lot of room to deviate from that. That's the legal requirement that we set on ourselves. So that would have to be part of the discussion. I believe Clerk Trueblood has estimations of those amounts, and that would be the starting point, I would imagine.
So I guess in response to the city's request for clarification of the process, we would convey to them our procurement policies on dealing with tax delinquent properties and ask them to put the formal request in to transfer it under Chapter 75 or under our ordinance. Would that be the appropriate mechanism?
I think that would work.
Supervisor Lemmer.
What if they decide they don't want to pay us for it? Then we just keep it?
Well, I think that's part of the discussion that might be taking place behind you. And if they are undevelopable, the market for them is probably compromised and the value therefore compromised. So the question is what do we want to do and what options are there available to us? Chair Gibbs.
Well, I think, as Corp Counsel alluded to, I think for the first question that we have is, what's the debt that the county has incurred on those properties, and have those discussions with the municipalities and go from there.
Go ahead, Ken.
So the property on Statine Drive, when it was taken in 2005, the tax payoff was $17,350.37. The Northwestern Avenue property, when it was taken, was $30,154.43. And per the city's finance director, the city portion is about 30%. So the Statine Drive property, the city portion that we would have given to the city, 520511, Northwestern 904633.
So, Chair Gibbs.
Well, I guess I would recommend that we have a direct administration to have a discussion with the municipality, at least on a potential, or at least recovery of what we had settled with the city in these two parcels for. I don't know that it's the county's fault that the developer in one case didn't transfer it, but at least we should be able to recover what we have settled with the municipality.
So is there a motion to direct administration to enter into discussions with the city relative to the transfer of the property. Chair Gibbs.
I'll make a motion to direct administration to have discussions with the city in regards to the properties on 2111 Northwestern Avenue and 4412 Statine Drive, and try to negotiate a settlement on those purchase of those properties in light of what the county has settled with with the municipality directly.
Seconded by Supervisor Limmer. Any discussion? Any discussion? If not, all those in favor will signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no. That motion carries unanimously. Next, we have two closed proposals to go into closed session. Just a note that when we go into closed session, unfortunately, Supervisors Reynolds and Poole, we basically, there's not a provision for remote participation in those. We will allow you back in at the end of those sessions. But during the closed session, our county board rules call for only the members present to participate. Chair Gibbs.
I'll make a motion to go into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statutes 19.85, Parent 1, Parent E, for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session, to wit, review offer to purchase and discussion of a strategy regarding the potential sale of certain county property located at 5006 Chadwick Street and 5010 Heather Street in the Village of Weston, and 1702 Plum Drive in the City of Wausau.
Is there a second? Seconded by Supervisor Limmer. Any discussion? If not, a roll call vote will be taken. Clerk, call the roll.
Robinson.
Aye.
Marshall. Gibbs. Hart. Lemmer. Poole.
Aye.
Reynolds.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, we will now go into session. Can we notify them when? I don't think it'll be a long discussion. All right. And if I would ask members, please turn off their microphones.